This is Officer David Herron. After what I've seen and what I've done, I can no longer allow myself to be a part of this station. The events of December 19th will forever continue to haunt me. My decision, however, is not entirely based off of personal reasons. The fact that none of you will acknowledge the validity of my account or bring up any form of criminal charges against me shocks me to my very core. I shot a boy that day. I brought him to the coroner and had him remove the bullet to match directly with the casing in my gun. In the envelope under this letter, you will find a written recollection of what happened that day. I will assume you will file it away, never to be seen again, as with my last transcript. But I've made copies, and I will release them to the public if you don't. I fear no retributions for my actions. In fact, I fear the opposite, and welcome my punishment. An injustice has been committed, and it needs to be corrected. My thoughts now ruminate on God's judgment. May He have mercy on mine and all of your souls. It was December 19th. I've been patrolling the outskirts of the town. I won't lie and say that I was doing this for my regular duty. I was on a loose cannon mission, searching for a missing repeat felon punk named Nolan Cheswick. On that day, more so than the rest of the county, we've been hit the hardest by heavy snowfall. About 4 hours into my patrol, I could barely even tell where I was. Snow and trees were all I could even see for half an hour before anything but. The snow was forcing me to drive carefully, so I was able to catch the sight of something very odd. It was a clearing of trees with an odd figure sitting at the end of it. Before questioning the situation any further, I figured that no one should have to harsh these conditions, not even if they'd already passed. I pulled over and got out, only realizing what I was seeing when I was halfway in the clearing. A man, wearing clothing that looked to be made with stitched black cloth, had been murdered here. His eyelids had been cut off and his hands nailed above him to the tree on his back, his blood not pooling out because the wounds had been frozen over. I had to look away in disgust, but I turned back to the body and upon closer inspection realized that it was Nolan. I'd heard previous that he had moved in with some new gang, but it seems there was a falling out. It was made even more apparent by the message behind the tree where he now sat, written in what I can only assume is Cheswick's blood. Damned to see eternity. Checking the body, I'd figured it must have been a couple of days since the murder. I ain't no mortician, but it seemed that putrefaction had already begun to take place. I went to head back to my vehicle to try and signal the station of what I found, but no signal. I couldn't just wait until the storm passed to get back up to confirm what I already knew, so I went to investigate further. Deeper into the forest, the storm's impact was lessened. It was still cold and windy, but a majority of the snow was blocked by the cover of the trees. Figuring I could use the moss to determine where the road I parked my car on was, I set off, trying to find anything related to the case I'd found myself in. It took a bit of searching around the perimeter before anything out of the ordinary occurred. I heard a loud firing noise somewhere off to the left of my position. I promptly drew my pistol and began walking towards it. It took a bit of walking to get to the source of the sound. Before me stood the entrance to an underground compound. A large wire mesh fence surrounded the hill that the visible part of the bunker was built into. The last bit of sun was closing down at this point, and the snow had stopped falling so violently, so the scene gave off an uneasy yet peaceful atmosphere. The main gate part of the fence was completely opened, same as the metal front door of the bunker. Due to common courtesy, I shouted that I was police and entering the area. The way the compound was set up was strange. At the beginning, there was a small corridor that I would assume you'd be buzzed in at. Next looked like some sort of waiting room. Marble floors and white walls gave off a medical feel. It was even topped off with off-putting posters. Anyway, As I made my way through the compound, I noticed that a smell was beginning to form. Next, I saw a staircase which was followed by the main chamber. It was quite a large room with an odd sort of stage and shrine mixture. Above that read the message, "Truth for the willing." 6 rooms on either side contained identical living arrangements, military-style basic living. On the floor were, as I later counted, 94 dead bodies, all with their eyes gouged out, holding a 9mm pistol in their right hand, all of them emptied of one bullet which went into the heart. After I saw this, I fled outside to hurl, but I couldn't hold it in long enough and ended up staying in the white waiting room. I ended up kneeling in there for probably 10 minutes before steeling myself and venturing back down. Each of the bodies were wearing stitched black clothing, same as Cheswick. Some were robes, others wore shirt and pants, but all were of the same material. Walking to the stage at the back of the room, I noticed that the bodies all seemed to make half circles around it. The stage itself was quite plain, a raised platform with black curtains draped behind it ceremoniously and a table with some items present. Going to take a closer look, however, something below my right foot popped and squished. Looking down at my shoe, I immediately knew what it was. I had stepped on an eye. The pit in my stomach was growing ever larger, too large to care about respecting the lunatics who committed suicide below ground here. I scraped it off the floor and turned my attention back to the table. 2 white bottles of what I would assume was bleach or some other chemical substance, and a well-sized crate. Lifting the top off, I saw some stacks of vials in there, all containing a white liquid, and 2 white orbs, which I took to be eyes. I looked down at the other eye on the floor that I hadn't stepped on, and it was nearly all white, as though it had belonged to someone with cataracts. Counting the vials, there were 95 in total, yet one had nothing in it. I assumed that one was reserved for Cheswick. That was all. I was done with the place, investigatorily if not just mentally. Walking back out of the bunker with crate in hand for evidence, night had already fallen. Still wary of the place, I tried calling in on the radio once more, again to no avail. I couldn't see much, so I decided to use my pistol-mounted light. I hadn't even walked past the main fence before I heard something rustling in the shrubbery of the courtyard. Placing down the crate, I began to secure the area. Nothing will excuse what I did. I was on edge, I'll admit. After finding a suicide cult without their eyes in an underground bunker, I was not in prime condition. After seeing what they did to Cheswick, how they treated people opposed to them, fear might have entered my thought process. So when I found a young lad, no more than 17, hiding in the bushes, with a handgun that hadn't even had a magazine in it, I even found him began shouting, "Don't!" I lost my right to be a police officer in that moment, and none of you will do anything about it. All of you think that this isn't real, but I know. The tears I shed were real. The pain I felt, the pain that boy must have felt was real. There's not much to report from the scene after that. I brought the crate and the boy to my car after a period of searching for it, and the only remnants of Cheswick's body were his eyes, which I brought back as well. The radio wouldn't even work until I actually got back to the police station. That was my experience. That was the real truth of what happened out there on December 19th. When I brought my evidence and my story back, you were all shocked when you first bore witness to it all. But the complete apathy afterwards was the true horror. You couldn't find matches in the database to the eyes. You gave up. You couldn't find any records of a bunker in those woods. You gave up. The eyes themselves disappeared, leaving only the crate and the vials. You gave up. You couldn't find any relatives to the boy. The boy disappeared, except for what remained of his eyes, and you have no memory of him? Since all you had to go on is a completely fucked up eye encasing the bullet that shot it, matching my gun, by the way, my murder has never gone on the record. I was told to take the crate and my mess out of the station. I realized that nothing will come of this. The boy who apparently never existed would never see his family, nor they him. Cheswick has apparently never existed either, yet his eyes are still here. I feel as though I must publish this. People have to hear about this, or I too will fade away into obscurity.